Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows. Available everywhere podcasts.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the GSMC Fantasy Sports Podcast, brought to you as always by the GSMC Sports Network. And we are going to take a little bit of a transitional time for this segment to look at the world of college football. Week 5 is quickly going to come upon us, and we have a lot of good games on the slate for this weekend. A lot of top 25 matchups to go through as Tap to Learn comes up with a comment here before we get into this next segment. Alvin Kamara for Mason. I think that this week, I wouldn't be surprised if that was your play. I think that Alvin Kamara has a little bit of a more favorable matchup because I like the Falcons secondary more than I like their front, which means that the Saints game plan can get back to involving Kamara even more. And Mason, I think we see with him that he, at the end of the day, is good for a couple of big games, but in that offensive system, even with some of the weapons out, he's still seen as someone who's just setting the tone, if you know what I mean. I still think Brandon Ayuk and Jawan Jennings will run the show when it's all said and done in that offense. And so, as long as Jordan Mason is timely, that's the best thing that the 49ers can ask of him. So Alvin Kamara is going to be more of part of the Saints game plan, I feel, moving forward than Jordan Mason right now. So I wouldn't be surprised if Alvin Kamara has a better fantasy week than Jordan Mason. But back to the topic here of college football, because I do kind of want to get into it, because it's been a little bit of a respite from the world of college football here on the GSMC Fantasy Sports Podcast. And I want to bring it back into the limelight because we have a lot of interesting games this week. A lot of early games in different conferences that could define how we view certain teams. And this one that I'm going to start off with in terms of a betting perspective is a weird one because we didn't expect one of these teams to be where they are right now. And the other team has shown kind of a revolution in their offensive philosophies under new offensive coordinator Andy Kotelnicki. Of course, I'm talking about Illinois Penn State. Who would have thought this game would be a game between two ranked teams in the Big Ten that could define how we view these teams going forward as a CFP contender? Even calling Illinois right now a CFP contender is weird, but that's where they stand. And what I love about them is that they've done it through a timely defense and through opportunistic complementary offense. Let's face it, Luke Altmaier is not the best of college quarterbacks. He's someone who I feel like at the end of the day is more likely to want to play mistake-free than try and get the big play and effectively run the offense. But at the end of the day, he's kept them on schedule, most importantly, and he's let the defense run the show. I love their secondary combined with their run defense, and they're going to cause a true litmus test for this Penn State team. But if Penn State has changed anything about their team, and one aspect that I really like about it, it is their offense. They put up 41.3 points per game so far. Drew Aller has really stepped up his game, and Andy Kotelnicki has really made this offense a force to be reckoned with. Drew Aller, from what we saw from last year, where he played quote-unquote pretty well but wasn't throwing the ball far down the field enough, he's now ranked 16th in completion percentage, 5th in QBR, 2nd in yards per attempt. And combined with all these young receivers stepping up with guys like Omari Evans, Harrison Wallace III, they've really stepped up as well. And they still have two of the best running backs in the nation. Let's not forget about that aspect of it. Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen. But going up against Illinois, I feel like this is a defense that has the potential to really frustrate this offense. It can limit explosive plays and can get to the quarterback and get Drew Aller frustrated because, let's face it, they haven't faced the toughest of competition. Penn State, yes, Drew Aller has done a fantastic job of staying upright and protecting the football, but Illinois across the board can do it. And if they play timely defense and Luke Altmaier protects the football, I feel like this game can be closer than people expect. And I think that in terms of what Illinois' game plan is coming into this game, it's going to be very reliant on trying to frustrate on both sides of the football Penn State's team. Because let's face it, a lot of people are worried about Penn State's defense as well. And while Illinois' offense isn't explosive enough to get those big touchdowns, it is one of those offenses where through complementary style of football, through protecting the football, they can get their money's worth. And so it's a weird game to bet on. Penn State, albeit, are 17.5-point favorites. So they still are viewed as the overall superior team here. But I think, if anything, Illinois can cover that spread and maybe even comfortably. Because at the end of the day, Penn State is still a very fickle team. I want to see them up against the elite of the Big Ten. And so far, we don't know if Illinois is that, but we do know that Illinois is undefeated. As Andre said, of the Thursday Night Football prop, the last segment. Actually, my man, we did the Thursday Night Football props yesterday. Go check out that segment if you haven't already, my man. Sorry to kind of disappoint you if you were expecting that. We are going to go over some important injuries in the NFL in terms of the fantasy implications for that final segment, but thank you for your concern about that because I did want to mention Thursday Night Football props as well. But going ahead to another big game, not necessarily a big conference game, but an interesting one as well, Louisville and Notre Dame. I think that this game is more intriguing because of the limited margin for error for both teams. If you're Louisville, in a very competitive ACC, you want another high-profile win that's going to skyrocket you into contention as potentially an at-large bid, even though the ACC is not the most attractive conference for an at-large bid. And if you're Notre Dame, you just want to continue to stay in the conversation. That Northern Illinois loss is going to hurt you, but at the end of the day, if you continue getting nice wins against conference opponents as an independent school, then you're doing something right here. And I feel like this game is going to come down to Riley Leonard's play more than it is anything to do with Louisville, because Riley Leonard right now is relying a little bit too much on his legs, so I want to see him get more involved in the passing game. They have a lot of interesting weapons in the passing game. They have some of the best tight ends in the country. They have some interesting weapons in the wide receiver room as well. So it's going to be all about Riley Leonard in this game. Can he show he's not just predicated on trying to run the football effectively as their QB rather than, passing and just focus on what is best for this team? So it's going to be an interesting game. Notre Dame is a 4.5-point favorite, and I like them to cover the spread, but I can see a world, as Andre asks, what's your most confident Giants player prop? I would say the under for Daniel Jones passing yards is my most confident one because I feel like, yes, he has Malik Neighbors now, but I still feel that he's not as confident distributing the ball, varying this offense that much right now. So I look for him to continue to struggle to put up nice passing yardage numbers. So that would be my most confident one, but I wouldn't say it's the most popular one. I would say Malik Neighbors is getting a lot of hype, so make of that what you will, but my most confident one is that Daniel Jones definitely doesn't feel like he's going to have the yardage totals tonight. It's just my opinion, and I hope that it really helps you in terms of figuring out how to bet on this game. In terms of another college game that I really like, Georgia-Bama. This is the big one of the week. And I think that this game could really not only define the SEC, but really define how bettors and odds makers going forward value these teams in the SEC as well. Because when I look at the landscape of the SEC right now, Texas is figuring to be a top dog. They're going to start SEC play. We still don't know necessarily about Missouri. We saw the impressive nature of Tennessee's win on the road against Oklahoma. So this game really doesn't feel like it's that important, but it's that important in terms of how people will bet on them going forward. UGA is only a 2.5-point favorite. The over-under is 49.5, a money line right now. Georgia minus 125, Alabama plus 105. So I can really see this game go either way, in that either Georgia can control the tempo of this game after that sloppy week against Kentucky and taking that bye week this week. they might just be the more prepared team, whereas Alabama might be too reliant on the big play. Or I can just say Alabama's explosiveness on the offensive side of the football completely overwhelms Georgia. And I feel like I'm more confident in the former because I know that Georgia is capable of that, and I know that extra week for Georgia is kind of a blessing because they also get back a lot of defensive depth as well. So I feel more confident in Georgia. But that being said, Alabama and their big play ability can keep them in this game. I'm not underestimating what Jalen Miller can do in the pass and run game outside of Alabama. So I feel like this game is going to be an interesting one to bet on just because of the fickleness of both of these teams and how they can come out in this game. But I feel like I'm more confident in saying Georgia are the worthy favorite than I am in saying Alabama will outright win this game against the spread. And the final game, another very interesting one that could really kind of seal the fate of Arizona right now in the Big 12 race and really kind of ascend Utah into not just Big 12 title contenders but CFP contenders as well. Arizona-Utah is going to be an interesting one because a lot of people might look at this as being like the CFP clinching game for Utah because I look at the schedule. Yes, they play surprise contenders in BYU and Iowa State in the Big 12 still, but Utah just feels like a team that if they win this game, it's going to be confidence going forward no matter who's at the QB position. They're favored by 11.5 points. And whether or not it's Isaac Wilson or Cam Rising in the QB position, Utah just feels right now they're going to cement themselves very well in the race for the Big 12. But that was just my opinion. Let me know what you think in the comments about these top bets in college football. Going to be an interesting week, really. I think that Georgia-Alabama game, a lot of people are going to have fun with betting-wise and stat-wise as well. But coming up to conclude today's show, we are going to be taking a little look around the NFL in terms of injury updates and ensuing fantasy implications for these players and teams in that matter. So you don't want to miss this final segment. We'll be right back after the break to conclude our show with it.